Let's talk a little bit about the photos that you either have or will be shooting for your still life subject matter. When I photograph with my phone, it automatically backs up to my Google Photos. So I can, after they have uploaded, go in and select all of the ones that I shot, and I shot quite a few, and download them. Okay, that will download a zip file of all of those photos. It'll take a moment. And while it's doing that, we're going to talk a little bit about the program we're going to use to do some editing on those photographs. We're going to be using Lightroom Classic. And Lightroom Classic is another of the cloud tools. You'll see it's in my list here, right up near the top. There is another Lightroom that is not Classic. This is not what we're going to be using. Make sure that what you download and install is Lightroom Classic. Okay. My controls will match yours that way, and you will see that there are actually greater controls within this for what we need to be doing. Okay. Once you have that downloaded and installed, we can open that up. You can see here I was looking at some of the things from the 9th grade retreat the other day. I'm going to unzip my photos, and now I have these. Okay, so in Lightroom Classic, I am going to, in order to get those photographs into this program, I'm going to import photos and video. Okay. Then it's going to ask me, select a source. So right now, those photos I downloaded are not in a convenient place. They're in downloads, and they should be photos too. There we go. You can see I download photos from Google Photos quite a bit. And they're all selected. They're all checked. So I want to import all of these photographs. And then hit, over here, import. Ooh, let's get that on the screen. Import. Okay. This imports your photos, but references the originals. It does not change the original file, even though we're going to do some editing. If you move the photos from where you brought them into this program, you'll have to reconnect them later. So, well, I'll do that later, I guess. Okay. So we have imported these. You can see here are my 53 photos of 5 or 6 different still life setups. You are going to need to take at least 25 or 30, so you will have a similar situation. Now, I have changed the lighting on each of these and or the perspective, right? So you can see what we have here. I tried to mix it up so that I could find something that appealed. Now, as I'm going through, I can decide that I want rate this one. Okay, so I can hit the number 3 and set my rating to 3 stars. This will become evident as a bonus later, but I can go through and pick the ones that I want. I'm going to pick these two because I want to show you some things about them. I actually like that one. That one's not too bad. Let's see what we can do with the dark shadows. Ooh, those shadows are fun. See, my problem is I like too many of them. I was having a lot of fun with this. And you can see you might like one perspective better than another. Then I made it horizontal. I changed the lighting. Nope. Maybe. I don't know. Do I like this one better or this one? Tough to probably this one's easier to draw, right? So anyway, you get to decide what you want to do. Ooh, those are fun. Lighting. Okay. Oh, and I flipped the hand around. Okay. And this is to show you what this lighting scenario looked like for this picture, right? I just pulled back to show you where the lights were. And you can see how, like, specifically I'm not lighting the backdrop so that I have a little bit of shadow there and it's not all white, but this is the white piece of paper backdrop. Anyway, some of these are kind of interesting. I don't know if it's going to be... Ooh, I like that one. No, there's some shadows involved. Ooh, that's not bad. Ooh, that's more of an exposure issue. Oh, and then close-up. You can actually do this with close-up if you want to. You're going to have to get into the texture a little bit more, but you could totally do that. And this I was hoping for some easy charcoal-y things for you guys later. Okay. Oh, see? That difference is whether or not you get the whole shadow or not. I like the whole shadow. Anyway, now I can go down here to filters and I've rated these, right? The stars are a rating system. So I can pull up everything that I've rated, and I rated everything I liked a 3. Okay. I could have rated some other things, but I have 16 of the 53 that I thought was like, okay, worth another look since I have up to 5 stars. That's not too bad. You are eventually probably going to narrow it down to 4, maybe 5 that are distinctly different, maybe 3 or 4. And then within those 3 or 4, you're going to pick the one you think you like the best and then mess around with your settings. Okay, so I'm going to actually pick this one for a minute because I actually, might be my favorite. I don't know if I want the darker background or the lighter background. Tough to tell. Maybe this one. Okay. So now I can go in and do some editing. To do editing, you need to click on Develop. Okay. Now, the first thing is we have over here presets, not color, black and white. We need to change these to black and white. As you go through these, you can see immediately what they look like. Okay. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And, oops, not that. Down here. You can see how each of these settings has a very different effect on the image itself. I don't know why it's being so slow. Either way. Soft is kind of interesting. Oh, that's the infrared. Okay. So you can play with these, but we definitely want to keep it in the black and white range. I'll go with low contrast for a minute. Then we can go over here. This is your histogram, right? So your black point is down here, black arrow. White point is up here. It's your white end of things. And you can shift any of this wherever you need it. Now, if you want to work subtly with your tones, you can brighten this whole thing up. Just make sure you have at least some texture in most of it. You might decide that the whites need to be a little whiter if you want a really white background. Maybe you want the shadows to be a little bit darker because you would like the cast shadow to be a little more pronounced. You might decide that you want a higher contrast for some reason, or you want a lower contrast because you want to be a little more subtle. You can make this very subtle and only small areas of sort of black or black. Or if you wanted a higher contrast, you could do the same thing here and have lots of areas of dark tone, depending on whether you perhaps wanted to use a softer graphite or you wanted to really engage some of the charcoal in some of these dark areas. You'd have all kinds of options. So here's another fun thing, is that if you're like, well, I want to see these two next to each other, compare contrast, right? So I'm going to continue to work with this image. I haven't changed anything else. I'm going to go up to photo. I'm going to say create a virtual copy. Now I have 2 of this same photograph, and I can alter this one to be the lighter, brighter, low contrast with just barely their shadows. Bring the blacks. Oh, I can bring the blacks up a little bit. That's not so bad. So you can see, you play with these, right? You can make this super light, but then you might want to bring the blacks down a little bit so you at least have a little bit of definition. And make sure you can see your texture enough to draw, right? You can kind of zoom in here. Again, this is just off my phone, so whatever. So you could decide you like that same picture, this one, right? So you can start to see how much latitude you have around what areas are going to be light, dark, low contrast, high contrast, how you want your photo reference to give you the information that you need. Um, this is also considered high key. High key lighting is where everything's pretty white. And there's not a lot of darks for your shadow areas. If we go instead to, we can play with this. And again, I'm going to go to, those are pretty punchy. Let's play this one. I can bring my whites up a little bit, so I have the background doesn't have a whole lot of texture. I may want to make that a little brighter and make my shadows a squidge lighter, because I lose all kinds of detail in here that I actually want. So I may want to bring those shadows up. I will still see these as distinct shapes, but I can play with like how much of the midtones I have available to me, right, in terms of this particular thing. Did I really cut off the edge of the... I totally did. Yeah, don't cut off the edge of the teapot. I would have to draw that in. Okay, so once you've selected your black and white range, then you can go in and really tweak like what you see. My suggestion would be to make sure that you don't blow out your highlights. This, we have no texture. There's no wood. You don't see how round it is. There's nothing to go from. So you want to make sure that you have enough information in your highlights. You'll have specular highlights. Specular highlights are the shiny bits that reflect pretty much just white, not a whole lot of texture. So we've got a couple over here. There's the shiny bits off the plastic pear. If you had metal or you had a really glossy ceramic piece, you'd have even more specular highlights. A little one here. So you'll see that in various places. We have that here. That's a specular highlight. This is a specular highlight. These are going to be mostly white. So as we are... Oh, and this is actually interesting. Remember we talked about, in the lighting video, we talked about how the red or the green would show up as a gray, very similar to the mid-tone gray that the backdrop is, right? So you always want to think about how that works. If we just take the saturation down, the whole thing tends to be really bland. The reason we use the black and white presets instead is because it's feeding off the color information, and it will actually, some of them will give you more information or more contrast in either the reds, the yellows, the greens, or the blues, depending on which one you choose. So that can be really helpful rather than just dropping out the saturation. The other thing to think about is cropping, right? So if I were going to do this, wow, that's really way too high contrast to see what I'm doing. Anyway, this is your cropping tool over here, right? Click on that and it gives you the capacity to crop. Now, don't crop the top of the shadow, right? I think we want that. I mean, that's why I did the lighting that way. So I want that. You decide what you want. But we could crop this way. Then, here we go. We could create a virtual copy from that, crop again, and decide what we really wanted was more about this for some reason. Right? Different picture. Maybe not as good a picture. Maybe we need, I don't know. But this is different, right? And if we were talking about negative space or the shadows becoming the active space, like that would make some sense. You might decide that you want a tighter composition. You don't want any of the objects to be fully present. This might be an interesting composition for you. When you have little pieces like this at the edge, right? Decide if they are going to be better there or not there. How close is and any of the important objects, the head of your wooden dummy here, uh, close to the edge? How close to the edge? Being cut off. If I get this too close to the edge, it'll feel a little cramped. I've already cut into my pear here. Is this little white space going to work for me? All of these things. So think about your composition and your cropping as you go, because you can do any number of things with all of these. What else should you know about Lightroom? We're going to do a lot more when it's not black and white as well. Not with these necessarily. But when we later are working with color pencils, you will be leaving them color and working with your photos. And this is where you can work with your exposure, open up your shadows so you can really see the color in there. You'll see some of that reflected light, like from when you did the sphere drawings, right? Reflection back from the paper up on the back, like the back side of the leg here. Those will become more obvious and more important to your composition as you go. So find some that you like, crop, change the exposure, contrast, shadows, whites, blacks, all of that, and crop. For this assignment, you need to make it black and white. And then once you have the ones you want, you need to select them. So let's say I have not cropped that one. Let's crop. Oh, tough call on that shadow. Maybe here. Okay. So that one, this one I also need to crop because there's too much white space. Boop. I'm going to print these. So like crop to what you need. If you don't need it, get rid of it so I don't waste the ink. That would be awesome. Or toner, such as it is. Okay, so I'm going to hold down the shift key. Oh no, what did I do? I got rid of it. Okay. Or rather the command key, sorry. And I'm going to select the ones that I want to print, that I want to, oops, there we go. Export to print. Let's say I want those 5. Then I can go up here and export, because I haven't actually changed the files. I have essentially overlaid a bunch of stuff over the image data, but if I want to have an actual file that looks like this, I need to export it. So I'm going to hit export, and this is where things get interesting. I'm going to put this in edited still life. That way I know what it is. And then I've edited these. And then here, put your name, right? And you can put still life. And maybe still life black and white. Something like that, right? So we know what we're talking about. And then it's going to number. So I have this under custom name sequence, right? Not the original file number, not any of this stuff, custom name sequence. Because what that's going to do is export these 5, and this will be Sutter Still Life Black and White 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then we can it'll take a second. And then on my slightly convoluted desktop, sorry, it's a mess. I should probably have cleaned this up. Edited still life, right? Here we go. And here are my 5 black and white pictures that I have to work with, right? So then we could have a conversation. You would put these side by side in your blog to show your thought process. And then we could decide which one you wanted to do. Maybe you would submit 2 and I could print 2 for you. And then you could pick the one you wanted to do for your final composition. It gives us options and a discussion point. Then if we looked at one of these and said, this would work great, except this is still really dark and I need to see a little more detail to be able to draw that, we can go back to Lightroom, and whichever, is that this one? I think it was this one. And we can zoom in, because you can truly zoom in on this thing. And then go over here and open those shadows up a little bit and be like, oh, okay. Or if we're being super picky and we love the sort of darkness of the shadows everywhere except here, we can go to our radial filter. So this guy, I can pull this way and I can like tilt it so it fits mostly just over that shadow area. I can go down here and click my invert so it's only going to apply to this part, and this is where I can go in and be like, you please open up that area a little bit with the shadows. I mean, I don't want to make it too bright, right? It's not like it's the light source. But I can open that area up a little bit there. And if you zoom out, now we can see relative to the rest of it, it's got a little more brightness, right? That's without it. That's with it. It's just sort of like a little like spotlight, right? So in that area, and I can be as precise as I want to be with that, I can have it right either where I can't see those edges and details, or I can open that up a little bit so I have a little more information. And I just double click and apply it. And then I can export this again with this information. File, export. Now I had 5 before, right? So I need to start with number 6 or it's going to overwrite one of the other ones. I want this to go right in the same place. And then we can go back. Boop. What did I do? Oh, I had them all selected again because I'm a genius. Anyway, here's the same one with that area opened up a little bit, right? So that is Lightroom in the super basic black and white, what you need to do to get your photo reference for this project. And we will have more details as we start to explore color when we get to the color pencil project. So good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.